Hi, my name is Meg Edwards, and I'm a GTD coach, and we're doing a series on GTD for beginners. And part of the series is going over the weekly review and the best practices of that. And this is video number 7, where on the first 6 videos, I talk about the get current part and the get clear part. I actually did it in reverse because the weekly review has 3 parts to it: get clear, get current, and get creative. But I wanted to start with the get current part because that's really the heart of the weekly review. And then I moved to get clear, and now we're going to do get creative. And there are 2 parts to the get creative part. Really, there's kind of one piece to this, which is reviewing your someday maybe list. And then I'll talk about the next part and summarize the weekly review in the next video. So let's talk about the get creative part, which is looking at your someday maybe list. I think the someday maybe list is the most underutilized list that exists still because people have a really hard time putting things on a someday maybe list. Maybe you want to call it your not now list or your ideas list or we talked about in the other videos about projects on hold or next actions on hold. It's all those things that, have your attention that you want to capture, but that you're not committed to move forward on. And so now that you've done the get clear and get creative part, you have a good sense of, do you have any space? Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have any space and you don't really need to look at those lists. Maybe you do have some space and you want to look at your someday maybe list. But this is the thing that I think trips people up. Some people have a lot of someday maybe lists. Some people have not many, but some people can have hundreds of things that they're tracking. When I was at the David Allen Company, we had databases on someday maybes. And so, you don't have to comb through them every weekly review. If you have, like, let's say you've got marketing ideas or you've got product development ideas, or you have ideas on decorating your house or gardening ideas, whatever it may be. If you have a lot of someday maybes, maybe create one someday maybe list of things that you do want to look at weekly or every other week. And then the other list, you get to decide, do you look at it monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever that time frame may be for you. But what is so important is that you trust the someday maybe list and you review it as often as you need to, because that will help you trust that you can take a project that you don't have the bandwidth or resources for, or a next action that you don't have the bandwidth or resources for, and tuck it away and then look at it as often as you want to see if you now have the space, time, and availability to be able to move forward on it. For me, I do have a someday maybe list that I like to look at weekly, but otherwise I have lists that I look at monthly or quarterly or yearly. For example, I'm a big gardener. And so I don't look at that list as often as I may look at other lists. Or I have some ideas about videos for our YouTube channel. I don't look at that every week. So I hope that this gives you some flexibility on your someday maybe list to be able to create the list that you need to and review them as often as you need to. And that's the get creative part, because the weekly review is also trying to get space, right? That when you're doing your weekly review, you want to have enough space for the doing time and the defining time and the unplanned, and that you can get the things that you want to get done. Or you've overcommitted, and it's too much. And so you need to take things off in the weekly review. A lot of people come into the weekly review kind of overwhelmed. And this is the time during the weekly review that you leave the weekly review not overwhelmed anymore. There's such a fine line between being overwhelmed and underwhelmed. And what I love about the weekly review is I get right back into that sweet spot that I'm not overwhelmed or I'm not underwhelmed. And so by doing the get clear and get current and get creative part, I'm right back into that sweet spot of having all the space that I need to be able to do the things that I want to personally and professionally. So in the next video, I'm going to be wrapping up the weekly review series. So give yourself some time to either build out your someday maybe list or your ideas list or all the lists of things that you want to be able to track. so that when you do your weekly review, you can review those lists appropriately and bring them forward when you decide that you've got the time and space and energy to act on those projects and actions and so forth. For more GTD resources, please visit gettingthingsdone.com and David Allen's YouTube channel. For more information on GTD coaching, please email us at info@gtdfocus.com or visit our website at gtdfocus.com.